The evening was warm, and the air inside the mansion felt heavy with the scent of expensive perfumes, polished wood, and a faint trace of fresh flowers. The grand chandelier in the center of the high ceiling cast sparkling reflections on the marble floors. Guests arrived in sparkling dresses and sharp suits, talking in hushed, excited tones. They had all heard of the Billionaire's challenge earlier in the week and were eager to see who would attempt it. Some were confident, already imagining themselves winning the enormous sum of money and the recognition that would come with it. The billionaire himself stood near the piano, a large black grand with shiny keys that seemed almost too perfect to touch. His smile was wide but carried a sense of mischief, almost like he enjoyed watching people squirm. He had spent the past few days teasing the press, promising a reward of $100 million to anyone who could play a piece of music on his piano that impressed him. Some thought it was just a publicity stunt, while others were curious to see if anyone could actually meet his challenge. In the midst of all this grandeur, a small figure moved quietly along the edges of the room. She was the daughter of the Maid, wearing a simple dress that was neatly pressed but far from the fashionable styles around her. Her hair was tied back and there was a shy determination in her eyes. She had come with her mother, who worked for the household, and she had watched the preparations and excitement from behind closed doors for weeks. The girl knew about the piano, of course, and she had always loved music, spending hours on the old keyboard at home, pressing the keys until she felt the music in her chest. Her mother gave her a gentle nudge, whispering words of encouragement. "You can do this. Remember everything you've practiced." The girl nodded quietly, feeling a mixture of nerves and excitement. She had never performed in front of so many people before, let alone a billionaire with a reputation for being unpredictable. But she knew one thing. She loved playing music and she wanted to try. Guests continued to chatter, most not noticing the small girl slipping past them. Some glanced down at her dress, some at her small frame, and some simply ignored her. They were too busy talking about the challenge, making guesses about who might win. Several of the well-dressed guests laughed among themselves, already imagining the awkward performances they might see. One man leaned over to a friend and whispered, "I can't wait to see a few of them fail. This is going to be amusing." The girl walked closer to the piano. Her small shoes clicked softly on the marble floor, almost drowned out by the murmur of conversations. She felt a flutter in her stomach, a nervous excitement that made her hands tingle. She could hear the distant laughter and the whispers of the crowd, but she tried to focus on the music she felt inside her. Every time she had sat at her old keyboard at home, she had imagined this moment, though never in such a grand place or with so many eyes watching. The billionaire noticed her as she approached. He raised an eyebrow and a sly smile appeared on his face. "And who might you be?" he asked, his voice carrying a hint of amusement. There was a laugh in his tone, one that made the girl's cheeks flush. The guests nearby turned their attention toward her, their expressions ranging from curiosity to disbelief. A few smirked, clearly expecting a small timid child to stumble and embarrass herself. The girl looked up, steadying her nerves. "I'm here to try," she said softly but clearly. Her voice was calm without any hint of hesitation. She could feel all the eyes on her, and for a brief moment she wished she could disappear. But then she remembered the hours she had spent practicing, the notes she had learned, and the melodies that had become a part of her. She took a deep breath and stepped closer to the piano. The billionaire leaned slightly closer, his smile broadening. "Are you sure?" he said, the amusement in his voice clear. "This piano is not easy. It requires skill, experience. Are you certain you want to embarrass yourself?" Some guests laughed softly, their whispers mixing with the gentle notes of conversation around them. They thought the child would never make it through a single piece. Her mother watched from a few steps behind, holding her breath. She had always known her daughter had a talent, but seeing her step into such an intimidating place was nerve-wracking. She remembered the hours her daughter had spent practicing late into the night, the determination in her small hands as they pressed the keys on a keyboard that was nothing like this magnificent piano. "You can do it," her mother whispered to herself, tears threatening to fall. The girl reached the piano and stood for a moment, looking at the shiny black keys. They reflected the chandelier above, each one gleaming like a tiny star. She placed her hands gently on the keys, feeling the cool, smooth surface beneath her fingers. She closed her eyes briefly, listening to the faint hum of voices around her, trying to find the quiet space inside her mind where the music lived. She had done this countless times at home, but this was different. This was real, with real stakes and real people watching. The guests murmured among themselves, some leaning forward to watch, others leaning back in their chairs, trying to stifle their laughter. "She doesn't stand a chance," someone whispered. Another guest smirked and said, "Let's see how long she lasts before she makes a mistake." The billionaire's eyes sparkled with anticipation, clearly entertained by the idea of watching her attempt and, in his mind, likely fail. Despite the doubting looks and the whispering, the girl felt a calmness begin to wash over her. She remembered the melodies she loved, the pieces she had learned by ear, the songs she had created in her imagination. She could feel the music in her fingers, waiting to flow through her to the keys. She took another deep breath, sat down on the piano bench, and positioned herself comfortably, her back straight but relaxed. Her small hands hovered above the keys, ready to begin. There was a brief moment of silence, a pause in the room as all eyes focused on her. The sound of a soft note breaking the quiet would signal the start of something no one expected. She pressed her first key gently, and a soft, clear note filled the room. The billionaire raised an eyebrow, slightly intrigued. Some guests shifted in their seats, surprised that the first note was not a mistake. Others leaned closer, trying to catch every sound. The girl continued, her hands moving slowly at first, finding the rhythm and the melody she had practiced so many times at home. Each note was careful, deliberate, but there was something in the way she played that was different from anyone else. There was feeling, a kind of expression that could not be taught. Even with the faint pressure of hundreds of eyes on her, she was beginning to find her own confidence. Guests watched in growing curiosity. The initial amusement in their faces began to fade, replaced by something more uncertain. A few whispered to each other, their voices low. "She's actually good," one said. "Listen to that, it's beautiful." Another nodded, unable to take his eyes off her hands moving across the keys. Even the billionaire seemed taken aback, his smile replaced by a look of mild surprise. He had expected failure, but something about the way she played was captivating, even at this very first stage. Her mother's heart swelled with pride. She had always known her daughter had a gift, but seeing it unfold in front of such an intimidating audience was overwhelming. She whispered encouragement again, almost unable to speak, afraid that even a single word might break the magic. The girl's face remained focused, her eyes occasionally closing as she allowed herself to be guided by the music alone. Time seemed to slow in the room. The chatter and laughter that had filled the mansion faded into the background. Guests could not help but be drawn into the gentle flow of the melody, the way it rose and fell with a natural grace. The billionaire, usually so in control of every situation, found himself leaning forward, curiosity replacing his earlier amusement. This was not what he had expected. He had thought the challenge would be entertaining at the expense of others. But now it seemed like the evening might hold a genuine surprise. The girl continued to play, her small fingers dancing over the keys with a mixture of precision and emotion. The music told a story, though no words were spoken. It spoke of quiet evenings at home, of determination, of dreams that refused to be limited by circumstance. Each note was clear and pure, and slowly the room began to change. Guests stopped whispering, stopped smirking, and instead listened. They were drawn into the music, feeling the emotion she poured into it. The billionaire's eyes softened slightly. He had seen many talented people, but there was something different about her performance. She was not just playing notes. She was telling a story with her hands. The challenge, meant to entertain him at someone else's expense, was now revealing something extraordinary. He could feel the weight of the room shifting, the surprise and admiration growing with each passing moment. For the first time that evening, the small girl at the piano was not just the maid's daughter, not just a quiet figure on the edge of the room. She was a musician, a storyteller, and a force that demanded attention. Her courage to step forward, to face the billionaire and the crowd, was beginning to pay off in the most unexpected way. The evening that had started with laughter and doubt was slowly turning into a moment of awe and quiet anticipation. And so, with a mixture of nerves and excitement, she continued to play, unaware of the full impact As the music from the grand piano flowed through the room, the initial laughter and whispers of disbelief began to fade. The billionaire, who had been leaning against a polished wooden pillar with a smug smile, now straightened up, his eyes fixed on the small figure at the piano. The girl's hands moved gracefully, pressing each key with confidence, yet her expression remained calm and focused. The notes carried a depth that was unexpected, a richness that made the air in the room feel lighter, almost as if the music was wrapping everyone in a quiet warmth. Guests shifted in their seats, some leaning forward to get a better view, others glancing at each other in astonishment. Their earlier amusement was replaced by curiosity and a hint of anxiety. They had assumed this challenge would be simple entertainment, a moment to laugh at someone brave enough to try and fail. But that assumption was slipping away with every passing note. Whispers began circulating, some acknowledging her talent, others wondering if they had underestimated her. One guest whispered almost to himself, "She's better than I thought. Listen to that." Her mother stood nearby, hands clasped tightly in front of her, heart pounding in her chest. She had watched her daughter grow up surrounded by music, teaching herself to play on a small, worn-out keyboard at home. There were nights when she would hear her daughter practicing late into the evening, fingers flying over the keys, creating melodies that seemed far beyond her years. Seeing her now in front of an audience of skeptics and the wealthy elite, she felt a mix of pride and fear. Pride for the courage and skill her daughter displayed, and fear for the weight of expectation that hung over her tiny shoulders. The billionaire's amusement had completely vanished. He leaned closer to the piano, resting his hands lightly on the edge, his smile replaced by a scrutinizing gaze. His mind, which had been filled with thoughts of mocking the girl, was now calculating in a different way. He had expected a mistake, a faltering note, maybe even tears, but none of that had happened. Instead, the music was flowing naturally, compelling, and surprisingly refined. For the first time in this challenge, he was uncertain. He felt something he had rarely experienced, curiosity, not control. Some guests began recording the performance on their phones, their previous smirks replaced by genuine admiration. They were silent now, careful not to interrupt the spell that the music was weaving around the room. Others could not believe what they were witnessing and exchanged quiet comments. "Where did she learn to play like this?" one asked. Another whispered, "I didn't think a child could handle a piano like this." The room's energy had shifted from casual amusement to attentive wonder. The girl, completely absorbed in the music, did not notice the changing expressions. Her eyes closed at times, letting the rhythm guide her hands. She was playing not for the money or the audience, but for the love of music itself. Her fingers moved deftly, each note flowing into the next with a natural grace. She played a melody that was both gentle and powerful, conveying emotion without words. There were soft passages where the notes seemed to float in the air, and louder, more commanding moments that grabbed the listener's attention. The billionaire, usually so accustomed to being the center of attention, found himself captivated. He had faced musicians before, many with formal training and vast experience, but none had made him feel this way. He could not tear his eyes away, as if the music held him in a quiet, irresistible grip. Meanwhile, other guests, initially confident in their own abilities and social standing, began to feel a mix of embarrassment and awe. They had expected to witness a child's failure, but instead they were watching a masterful performance. Some felt a pang of envy, realizing they had judged too quickly. The room was no longer a space for gossip and laughter. It had become a place of contemplation, where every ear strained to catch every note. The music seemed to tell a story of perseverance, courage, and quiet strength. Everyone felt it differently, but the effect was undeniable. The girl's mother, tears now welling in her eyes, could hardly believe the scene unfolding before her. She remembered her daughter's shy moments at home, how she would often play alone, imagining audiences in her head. Those private performances had now become real, performed on a piano that seemed enormous compared to her tiny frame, and in front of people whose approval she never expected to seek. The pride in her chest was overwhelming, and she silently mouthed words of encouragement, hoping her daughter could feel them across the distance. The billionaire's expression shifted again. He had started the evening with a plan to entertain himself at someone else's expense, but now he felt a strange sense of humility. He watched her hands, the way her fingers curved naturally, the precision and control that seemed effortless. He could see the focus in her eyes, the concentration and passion that drove her movements. It was clear she had spent countless hours practicing, not for fame or recognition, but for the love of creating music. He realized that her background, her simple dress, and her quiet demeanor had no bearing on the depth of her talent. A few guests exchanged looks of astonishment. One of them whispered, "I never thought I'd see this. She's incredible." Another nodded slowly, still watching intently. This is the kind of talent you only hear about in stories, not witness in real life. The atmosphere in the room was thick with emotion. The music had created a connection between the performer and every listener, a bond that transcended wealth, social status, and expectations. For a moment, everyone forgot the challenge, the money, the social posturing. There was only the music and the young girl bringing it to life. The girl, focused entirely on her performance, felt a sense of liberation. She was no longer the maid's daughter or the shy child who practiced in the corner. Here she was a musician, sharing her passion with the world. The keys beneath her fingers were extensions of her own expression, each note carrying the weight of her emotions, her determination, and her dreams. The audience, previously skeptical and mocking, was now completely immersed. Many moved to quiet admiration. Her mother's heart swelled with emotion. She had always encouraged her daughter to follow her passion, even when resources were scarce and opportunities seemed distant. She remembered nights when they could barely afford electricity, yet her daughter insisted on practicing late into the night. All those small sacrifices, all those moments of dedication, had led to this exact instant. Seeing her daughter in front of the room, performing with such confidence and skill, filled her with a sense of awe and gratitude. The billionaire, a man used to controlling every situation, felt the unusual stirrings of respect and even a touch of envy. He had always valued talent, but he had not expected such raw, natural ability from someone so young and unassuming. He realized that the true value of her performance was not the notes themselves, but the courage and authenticity behind them. It was a lesson he had rarely experienced firsthand, and it left him quietly reflective. Other guests, inspired by what they were witnessing, began to whisper among themselves. "She has something special," one said. "It's not just the skill, it's the feeling she puts into it." Another added, "I think this is a reminder that talent isn't always where you expect to find it." The room's atmosphere had transformed entirely from skepticism to admiration. The power of her performance was undeniable, and the attention had shifted entirely toward her, the young girl who had dared to try when no one else believed she could. As the piece continued, the notes flowed effortlessly, each phrase building on the previous one, creating a story that resonated with everyone in the room. The billionaire watched closely, no longer with a desire to mock, but with a genuine curiosity and a growing sense of respect. The young girl's confidence was rising with every note, and even in this intimidating environment, she was finding her voice and expressing it through the piano. Her mother's hands trembled slightly as she clutched her apron, tears streaming silently down her face. She had always known her daughter had a gift, but seeing it displayed so magnificently and in front of such an intimidating audience was overwhelming. The pride she felt was indescribable, a mix of joy, amazement, and gratitude. She silently wished she could freeze the moment, capture it forever, because it was the culmination of years of dedication, practice, and courage. The audience, captivated, no longer spoke. Some had stopped recording on their phones, realizing that no device could truly capture the emotion and skill they were witnessing. Others simply leaned forward, drawn into the music, their attention fully captured. The initial laughter and mockery had disappeared, replaced by a quiet reverence for the young performer. The billionaire, standing close by, felt a rare humility, recognizing that he was witnessing something extraordinary, something that could not be bought or manufactured. The girl, oblivious to the awe she had inspired, continued playing. Each note, each chord was a testament to her dedication and passion. She had practiced in quiet moments, away from attention, learning not for fame but for the love of music, and now that love was transforming the room, changing the perceptions of those who had doubted her, leaving everyone present with a sense of wonder. As the final passage approached, her confidence was evident. She played with a freedom and clarity that drew every ear and heart in the room toward her. The notes continued to flow from the grand piano, filling every corner of the large room with a melody that seemed to float effortlessly in the air. The maid's daughter sat at the bench, her posture perfect, her small fingers moving across the keys with a mixture of grace and precision. Each chord, each delicate note, was deliberate and full of emotion. The music was no longer just a demonstration of skill. It had become a story that everyone could feel, a story that captured the hearts of those who had doubted her. The billionaire watched closely, his eyes narrowing slightly as he leaned toward the piano. He had faced many musicians over the years, some famous, some skilled, and some with raw talent. Yet, none had ever managed to make him feel this combination of surprise and respect. He had been ready to laugh at the girl, certain that she would falter in the first few measures. Now he was silent, watching, listening, and unable to look away. There was a sincerity in her playing, a depth of feeling that was rare and captivating. It was more than talent. It was passion, discipline, and courage all wrapped together in one performance. Guests who had initially mocked or doubted her were now leaning forward, trying to absorb every sound. A quiet murmur passed through the room, whispers that carried admiration and disbelief. "She is incredible," one whispered softly. Another added, "I didn't think someone this young could play like that." Even the most confident of the elite were silenced, unable to ignore the music's pull. Phones were lowered, conversations paused, and every pair of eyes turned toward the piano, witnessing the transformation of a shy girl into a musician who held the room in her hands. Her mother watched from a short distance, feeling a surge of pride and relief. She had known her daughter was talented, but seeing her perform on such a stage with so many critical eyes upon her was overwhelming. She remembered the nights when her daughter had practiced late into the night at home, often on an old, out-of-tune keyboard. Those long hours of practice, the dedication and patience were now being realized in a way neither of them had imagined. She wanted to cheer, to cry, to laugh with joy all at once, but she held herself still, silently rooting for her daughter. The girl's fingers moved over the keys in a way that was both controlled and expressive. She had a rhythm that seemed to speak directly to the audience, a cadence that rose and fell like waves. The music carried her emotions, telling a story without words, expressing courage, hope, and the quiet determination she had felt all her life. She could feel the audience's attention, the way they were drawn to every note, yet she was not distracted. Her focus was on the music itself, letting it flow from her heart through her hands and into the room. The billionaire's expression shifted again. He was no longer seeing her as the daughter of a maid or a child who had dared to enter his world. He was seeing a musician, someone who had skill and heart, someone who deserved to be recognized for what she was achieving in that moment. The initial thought of entertainment at her expense had completely disappeared. What he felt now was respect, a rare acknowledgement that true talent could appear in the most unexpected places. Other guests were moved in their own ways. Some leaned forward, holding their breath as if afraid to blink and miss a note. Others whispered to each other, unable to hide their astonishment. "I've never heard anything like this," one said softly. "She's playing with so much feeling," another added. "It's amazing how she's so calm and precise at the same time." The room, once filled with chatter and laughter, was now united in a shared experience, captivated by a single performer. Her mother's thoughts drifted to the small victories of her daughter's life. She remembered the first time the girl had played a complete song without making a single mistake. She remembered the time she had learned a complicated piece by ear, surprising even her music teacher. And now here she was, performing in front of hundreds, including one of the wealthiest men in the world, and holding the entire room in the palm of her hands. The mother's heart was full of awe, gratitude, and pride. The girl's confidence grew as she continued to play. She could feel the energy of the room shifting with every note. The audience was no longer judging, no longer whispering or laughing. They were listening, fully immersed in the music. Each phrase she played seemed to pull them deeper into her story, and every rise and fall of the melody brought a new wave of emotion. She was no longer simply performing. She was communicating, sharing a part of herself with everyone present. The billionaire, still standing near the piano, began to smile faintly, a rare softness in his usually sharp expression. He had underestimated the power of authenticity and the impact of genuine talent. The girl's playing reminded him that skill was not always measured by experience or prestige, but by heart, dedication, and courage. He felt a subtle shift in his own perspective, a quiet admiration for the young girl who had dared to take a chance. Other guests began to whisper quietly, their earlier doubts fading away. "It's like she's telling a story with each note," one said. Another nodded. "I can feel everything she's feeling. It's incredible." The atmosphere in the room had transformed completely. Where there had been skepticism and laughter, There was now a deep sense of respect and fascination. Everyone was connected by the music, experiencing the story she had chosen to share through her performance. The girl's mother, holding her breath, could barely watch without tears welling in her eyes. She had always encouraged her daughter to pursue music, even when resources were limited and the world outside seemed indifferent. Now she saw the rewards of those quiet years of dedication and love for music. She silently praised her daughter, whispering encouragement in her heart and feeling an overwhelming sense of pride. The room had become completely absorbed in the performance. The soft rustle of movement, the occasional clearing of throats, even the faint sound of a camera shutter, all seemed secondary to the music that filled the space. The melody was more than sound. It was a presence touching hearts and minds in ways that words never could. The girl's expression was serene, a mixture of focus and joy as she allowed herself to be carried by the music. Her fingers moved with increasing confidence and mastery. The melody rose, building intensity without rushing, creating a sense of anticipation and excitement. The audience felt the tension and release of each passage, caught in the ebb and flow of her musical storytelling. Even those who had been certain of her failure now found themselves swept up in the beauty and power of her playing. The billionaire, standing silently nearby, could not help but feel the impact of her performance. His earlier amusement was replaced with a mixture of respect and awe. He had been prepared to mock, to watch someone fail, and instead he was witnessing a performance that demanded attention and admiration. The realization was humbling, a rare moment where he understood the power of talent and courage without any embellishment or pretense. Guests whispered quietly, sharing their astonishment and admiration. "I can't believe this is happening," one said. Another added, "It's like she's been born to play the piano." The sense of wonder was palpable, a shared experience that united everyone in the room, regardless of their status or expectations. They were witnessing not just a performance, but a transformation, the transformation of perception, doubt, and judgment into awe and respect. The girl, unaware of the full impact she was having, continued to play with dedication and focus. Each note carried her emotions, each chord expressed her story. She had come to the piano with a desire to try to perform and to share her love of music. She had not anticipated the attention, the skepticism, or the admiration she would inspire, yet she handled it with poise beyond her years. Her mother, standing quietly, felt the culmination of years of effort and dreams. She had seen her daughter grow through countless challenges, learning resilience, patience, and determination. Now she watched her succeed in a way that surpassed even her own expectations. Tears flowed freely, a silent tribute to the courage, talent, and heart of her daughter. The music reached a gentle, lingering passage, soft and reflective. The audience held their breath, sensing the final notes approaching. Every ear in the room was tuned to her playing, every heart touched by the story she had woven through melody. The room seemed to hold its collective breath, awaiting the conclusion of a performance that had already left a lasting impression. In that moment, the girl at the piano was no longer simply the maid's daughter. She was an artist, a storyteller, and a young musician who had captivated an audience of skeptics, including the billionaire who had set the challenge. The performance was more than a display of skill. It was a testament to courage, passion, and the power of following one's heart. Every note she played brought the room closer to understanding the depth of her talent and the determination that had brought her to this stage. The room was silent as the final note lingered, a delicate echo that seemed to suspend time. Guests slowly exhaled, their expressions a mixture of awe and disbelief. The billionaire, standing near the piano, finally allowed himself to smile, a genuine acknowledgement of the girl's remarkable performance. The evening, which had begun with laughter and doubt, had transformed into a moment of quiet admiration, where the extraordinary talent of a humble young girl had captured the hearts of everyone. The music had now reached a point that left the audience completely silent. Each note the maid's daughter played carried weight and emotion, weaving a tapestry of sound that seemed to reach every corner of the room. The soft beginnings of the piece had grown into a powerful, commanding melody that filled the space with beauty and intensity. The audience, once skeptical and dismissive, now sat in awe, held captive by the girl's extraordinary talent. Her fingers flew across the piano keys, precise and confident. Each note told a story, speaking of hope, courage, and determination. The audience could feel the depth of her passion, and many found themselves holding their breath, afraid to break the magic that had been created. The music was no longer just sound. It was an experience, a connection between the performer and everyone present. The billionaire leaned forward, his previous amusement replaced by genuine amazement. He had witnessed countless performances over the years, yet nothing had touched him in this way. He watched the girl's small hands move effortlessly, creating a sound that was rich and captivating. He could feel the power of her talent, the dedication she had invested in her craft, and the courage it had taken to face an audience like this. Guests exchanged glances, their previous doubts and laughter replaced by silent admiration. Some whispered, trying not to disturb the flow of music. "She's incredible," one said. Another added, "I've never heard anyone play like this, not even at professional concerts." The atmosphere in the room was electric, but in a quiet, respectful way. Every person was drawn into the story being told through the piano, experiencing emotions that were difficult to put into words. Her mother watched from the sidelines, tears streaming down her face. She had always known her daughter was talented, but witnessing her perform at this level, in front of such an important audience, was overwhelming. She remembered the countless hours spent practicing at home, the dedication and persistence that had brought her daughter to this moment. Pride and gratitude filled her heart, and she silently encouraged her daughter, hoping she could feel her support. The music shifted subtly, moving from powerful and commanding to soft and delicate. The girl's control over the piano was remarkable. She could make it sing and whisper, create tension and release, and convey complex emotions through her hands. Each chord resonated, touching the hearts of the listeners. Even the billionaire, known for his sharp criticism and high standards, found himself captivated by her performance. Guests leaned forward, eyes fixed on her hands, following each movement with fascination. The room was filled with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Many had assumed this would be a brief, forgettable moment of entertainment, but now they were witnessing something extraordinary. The young girl had transformed from a quiet, humble figure into a musician who commanded the attention and respect of everyone present. Her mother's mind raced with memories of her daughter's early years, of her relentless pursuit of music despite limited resources. She remembered the nights when they had little to eat, yet her daughter would practice on an old, worn-out keyboard, determined to perfect every note. Those small sacrifices had led to this moment, and she felt a deep sense of pride and love. She knew her daughter's courage and talent had brought them to a place they could never have imagined. The billionaire's gaze softened as he continued to watch. He had expected to be entertained at someone else's expense, but instead, he was witnessing genuine talent and passion. The girl's performance was a reminder that true ability could come from anywhere, and that courage and dedication were just as important as formal training or social status. He felt a quiet admiration for the young musician, recognizing the remarkable achievement she was creating before his eyes. As the piece continued, the room remained completely silent, every ear attuned to the music. The notes flowed seamlessly, each one building upon the last to create a story that was both powerful and moving. The audience could feel the emotions behind the music, experiencing a range of feelings from wonder to joy to quiet reflection. The girl's performance was more than technical skill. It was a testament to her heart and soul, her courage, and her dedication to her art. Her fingers moved with confidence and precision, each note intentional and expressive. She played not just with skill but with understanding, conveying the emotions she had felt and the story she wanted to tell. The audience was captivated, unable to look away or think of anything else. Every sound, every movement created a connection between the performer and the listeners, a shared experience that left them in awe. The billionaire, still standing near the piano, felt a sense of humility and respect. He had underestimated the power of a single person's talent and the impact of courage and dedication. The girl had taken a risk, stepping into a world far above her own, and had succeeded in a way that none of them had expected. Her performance was a reminder that greatness could appear in the most unlikely places, and that true talent was not always measured by status or wealth. Guests whispered softly, their admiration growing with every passing note. Some exchanged looks of disbelief, unable to comprehend how someone so young and humble could command such skill and emotion. Others simply sat in quiet amazement, fully absorbed in the music. The atmosphere in the room had shifted completely, from skepticism and mockery to deep respect and fascination. Her mother, overwhelmed with pride, felt a mixture of emotions. She was grateful for the opportunity her daughter had been given, proud of the courage she had shown, and amazed by the skill she displayed. She silently encouraged her daughter, knowing that this moment was the result of years of dedication, practice, and love for music. Tears streamed down her face as she watched, unable to contain the pride and admiration she felt. The girl's music reached its peak, a powerful and moving crescendo that filled the room with energy and emotion. The audience was captivated, every person fully immersed in the experience. The billionaire, standing silently, could feel the impact of her performance, a rare moment of awe and respect washing over him. He had witnessed many performances, but none had left him feeling so moved and inspired. As the final notes approached, the girl's confidence and poise were evident. She played with a sense of purpose and clarity, each sound intentional and expressive. The audience held its breath, fully aware that they were witnessing something extraordinary. The music conveyed courage, determination, and beauty, leaving everyone present in silent admiration. When the final note lingered in the air, the room remained quiet for a moment, as if none wanted to break the spell. Then slowly, the billionaire allowed himself to smile, a rare expression of genuine admiration and respect. The guests, equally captivated, began to exchange glances and whispers, acknowledging the incredible performance they had just witnessed. The young girl at the piano had transformed the room, capturing hearts and commanding respect with her talent and courage. Her mother, tears streaming, stepped forward to embrace her daughter silently, proud beyond words. The girl had not only played a piece of music, she had created an unforgettable moment, one that would be remembered by everyone present. She had faced doubt, skepticism, and a challenging audience. Yet she had triumphed with grace, courage, and extraordinary skill. The audience, now fully aware of the magnitude of her performance, sat in stunned silence. They had expected a simple, amusing display, but had instead witnessed something truly remarkable. The girl had taken a challenge that seemed impossible and turned it into an unforgettable demonstration of talent, determination, and heart. The room, once filled with laughter and doubt, now resonated with admiration and respect, all centered on the small figure at the piano who had dared to try and succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. As the last note faded from the grand piano, the room remained in a quiet, stunned silence. Every person was still, absorbing what they had just witnessed. The maid's daughter sat at the piano bench, her hands resting lightly on the keys, and her chest rising and falling as she caught her breath. For a moment it felt as though the world had stopped, leaving only the sound of her music lingering in the air. The billionaire, who had spent the evening expecting to mock and be entertained at someone else's expense, now stood in awe. He could hardly believe what had just happened. His initial smirk had been replaced by a look of astonishment, admiration, and perhaps even humility. He had been prepared to laugh, but instead, he had witnessed a performance that was beyond anything he had expected. The skill, the emotion, and the courage it took for the young girl to perform had completely captivated him. Guests, who had once whispered, laughed, and doubted, now looked on with expressions of wonder. Some were leaning forward, their mouths slightly open in disbelief. Others had tears in their eyes, overwhelmed by the beauty of the performance. They exchanged quiet whispers, trying to find words to describe what they had just experienced. "She's unbelievable," one murmured. "I've never heard anything like that," said another. There was a sense of shared awe that ran through the room, binding everyone together through a common experience. Her mother, standing just a few steps away, felt a mixture of pride, relief, and amazement. She had watched her daughter grow up surrounded by music, often in quiet moments at home, practicing on an old worn keyboard. The hours of dedication, the relentless pursuit of improvement had all led to this very moment. She was overwhelmed by the courage her daughter had shown and the extraordinary skill she had displayed. Tears streamed down her face as she quietly whispered words of encouragement, her heart full of love and pride. The young girl, still seated at the piano, began to feel the weight of what she had accomplished. The nervousness she had felt moments earlier had transformed into a quiet confidence. She realized that she had not only played the piece but had captured the attention and admiration of everyone in the room. The journey from a shy, humble girl to a performer who had moved a room full of skeptics was overwhelming, yet exhilarating. She felt a deep sense of accomplishment, knowing that her dedication and passion had brought her here. The billionaire stepped forward, breaking the silence. His voice, usually sharp and commanding, carried a rare tone of genuine admiration. "I have to admit," he said, looking directly at the young girl, "I did not expect this. You have talent, courage, and a heart that comes through in your music. I underestimated you, and I am impressed beyond words." The room held its breath, hanging on every word. The billionaire's praise, especially after his initial mockery, carried weight, making the moment even more powerful. Guests erupted in quiet applause, careful not to disturb the lingering emotion of the performance. Some stood clapping gently, while others remained seated, their hands pressed together in appreciation. The young girl's mother could hardly contain her tears of joy, seeing her daughter recognized not only for her skill, but for her bravery. The girl herself rose from the bench, bowing slightly, a humble acknowledgement of the admiration she had earned. She felt a mix of relief and joy, knowing that she had made a lasting impression. The audience began to murmur in excitement, sharing their impressions and astonishment. Some were discussing the technical mastery of the performance, others, the emotional depth conveyed through the music. It became clear that this was no ordinary performance. It had touched hearts, changed perceptions, and created an unforgettable experience. The young girl had not only played beautifully, but she had also conveyed her story, her journey, and her courage, all through the language of music. The billionaire, still watching closely, nodded thoughtfully. He had seen many talented individuals in his life, yet this young girl's performance was something different. It was authentic, pure, and compelling. He realized that he had not only underestimated her abilities, but had also learned a lesson about talent, courage, and the power of pursuing one's passion. In that moment, he felt a sense of respect and admiration that was rare for him, acknowledging that greatness can emerge from unexpected places. The girl's mother approached quietly, wrapping her arms around her daughter in a warm embrace. She whispered words of pride and love, her voice trembling with emotion. "You did it," she said softly. "I always knew you could, and now the world can see too." The young girl felt a rush of gratitude and joy, overwhelmed by the support and pride radiating from her mother. It was a deeply human moment, connecting them through shared experience, love, and recognition. Guests began to reflect on the performance, their minds replaying the melodies, the crescendos, and the delicate passages that had captured their attention. They realized that the performance had gone beyond mere technical skill. It had conveyed a story, emotions, and a sense of humanity that resonated with everyone present. The young girl had transformed a simple challenge into a profound moment of inspiration and connection. The billionaire stepped closer, his demeanor now respectful and attentive. He extended a hand toward the young girl, offering acknowledgement and congratulations. His earlier mockery had been replaced by a genuine appreciation for her talent and courage. The audience watched as this moment unfolded, understanding the significance of the acknowledgement from such a powerful figure. It was a recognition not just of skill, but of determination, heart, and the bravery to step into a space that many would have found intimidating. The young girl accepted the gesture with grace, her eyes meeting the billionaire's with a quiet confidence. She had faced doubt, skepticism, and the pressure of a challenging audience, yet she had persevered. The acknowledgement she received validated the years of practice, the dedication to her craft, and the courage it took to perform in front of an audience that had initially doubted her. It was a powerful moment of triumph, not just for her, but for anyone who had ever pursued a dream despite obstacles. Guests continued to applaud, some rising to their feet in admiration. The room was alive with energy and respect, the earlier tension replaced by a sense of shared appreciation for what had just transpired. The young girl had not only impressed the audience but had also inspired them, showing that courage, dedication, and talent could overcome any expectation or barrier. Her mother remained close, tears of joy streaming down her face as she watched her daughter receive the recognition she had long deserved. She had nurtured and supported her daughter's love for music, often in difficult circumstances, and now saw the reward of those efforts. The pride she felt was immeasurable, a mixture of love, gratitude, and admiration for the young girl who had shown courage beyond her years. The billionaire, having regained composure, addressed the audience. He spoke of the importance of recognizing talent, courage, and passion, regardless of background or status. His words carried weight, emphasizing the extraordinary nature of the young girl's achievement. He praised her for stepping forward, for performing with authenticity, and for sharing her heart through music. The acknowledgement was powerful, reinforcing the significance of her performance and inspiring everyone present. The young girl, standing beside the piano, felt a sense of fulfillment and accomplishment. She had faced the challenge, overcome doubt, and shared her love of music with an audience that had initially doubted her. The experience had been transformative not only for the audience but for herself. She had proven that talent and courage could shine brightly, regardless of circumstances, and that dedication and passion could overcome skepticism and doubt. The room slowly began to settle, the applause subsiding into quiet murmurs of admiration. Guests reflected on what they had witnessed, recognizing the extraordinary nature of the performance. The young girl's courage, skill, and authenticity had left a lasting impression, creating a memory that would remain with everyone present. It was a moment of triumph not just for her, but for anyone who had ever faced doubt or skepticism and chosen to pursue their dreams. As the evening continued, the young girl's performance became the central topic of conversation. Guests shared their thoughts, praised her talent, and marveled at her courage. The impact of her performance extended beyond the music, serving as an example of perseverance, passion, and the power of believing in oneself. It was a moment that would inspire, uplift, and resonate long after the night had ended. Her mother stood by her side, filled with pride and joy. She had watched her daughter grow from a shy, determined child into a young musician capable of captivating an entire audience. The experience had validated the years of practice, the sacrifices, and the unwavering dedication to music. She knew that this moment was only the beginning of a journey that would continue to inspire and impact others. The billionaire, reflecting on the performance, acknowledged that he had underestimated the young girl. Her talent, courage, and dedication had transformed the room and created a lasting impression on everyone present. He recognized that true greatness could emerge from unexpected places, and that the power of music, passion, and perseverance could transcend expectations and barriers. It was a moment of learning, respect, and admiration for all involved. The applause slowly faded, leaving behind a quiet sense of awe and reverence in the room. Every guest seemed to be lost in thought, replaying the moments of the performance in their minds. The maid's daughter, now standing beside the grand piano, felt a mixture of relief, pride, and disbelief. She had faced the skepticism and mockery of the crowd, performed under immense pressure, and had emerged victorious in a way that none could ignore. Her hands, once trembling with nerves, now rested gently at her sides, a testament to the strength she had summoned to reach this moment. Her mother approached, embracing her with warmth and love, tears streaming down her face. She whispered words of pride and encouragement, and the young girl felt a deep sense of gratitude. Every note she had played had been a reflection of her dedication, courage, and heart. She had shared her music not for wealth or recognition, but for the pure joy of performing and expressing herself. Now she realized that her music had touched more than ears. It had touched hearts. The billionaire, still standing nearby, surveyed the room with a newfound respect. He had entered the evening expecting amusement and ridicule, confident that his challenge would be a source of entertainment at another's expense. Instead, he had witnessed something extraordinary. He walked slowly toward the girl, his usual commanding presence softened by admiration. "You have exceeded every expectation," he said, his voice calm but filled with genuine emotion. "Your talent, your courage, and the way you connect with the music and the audience. It is remarkable. You have proven that true skill and passion cannot be measured by circumstance or background." Guests, inspired by the billionaire's words, began to clap again, this time in a more heartfelt and celebratory manner. Some stood, others remained seated, but all shared a sense of collective recognition for the young performer. The girl's mother wiped her tears, proud beyond words, and felt an overwhelming gratitude for the moment that had unfolded. Her daughter's bravery and talent had not only earned admiration, but had transformed the atmosphere of the entire room. The young girl, though overwhelmed by the praise, managed a humble smile. She had entered the room as the daughter of a maid, unsure of how she would be received. And now she stood as a musician recognized and respected by some of the most influential and discerning people in the room. She felt a quiet sense of fulfillment, knowing that her dedication to music and her courage to perform had created a moment that would be remembered. As the guests continued to reflect on the performance, conversations began to shift from disbelief to inspiration. Many spoke softly about how the young girl's talent had surpassed all expectations, noting not only her technical skill, but the emotional depth she had conveyed. Some remarked that her performance had reminded them of the importance of passion, perseverance, and the courage to face challenges without fear of judgment. The room was alive with admiration and contemplation, a transformation from the initial mockery and doubt. Her mother gently guided her daughter to sit back at the piano, and the young girl felt a renewed sense of calm and purpose. The act of playing, even after such an extraordinary performance, remained a source of joy and comfort. She placed her hands on the keys, letting her fingers move naturally, producing soft, delicate notes that filled the room once more. This time, however, there was no pressure, no expectation. It was simply the music, flowing freely and beautifully, connecting her to the world around her. The billionaire watched, his expression thoughtful. He realized that the value of the performance went far beyond the monetary challenge he had proposed. It was not the promise of wealth that mattered, but the courage to perform, the dedication to one's craft, and the ability to inspire and move others. He saw the power of authenticity, of sharing one's passion without reservation. In that moment, he understood a lesson that was rare and profound. True greatness is often quiet, humble, and driven by love rather than ambition. Guests, too, seemed transformed. They no longer whispered about social status, wealth, or expectations. Instead, they were captivated by the music, reflecting on their own lives, passions, and the courage it took to pursue them. The young girl had created an atmosphere that was both intimate and powerful, where each person felt connected not only to the performance, but to the story it conveyed. They had witnessed the extraordinary emergence of talent in its purest form, untainted by ego or expectation. Her mother felt a deep sense of peace and pride. She remembered the nights of struggle, the small victories, and the endless hours of practice her daughter had dedicated to music. Every moment had led to this night, and now she could see the result. Her daughter, confident and respected, sharing her gift with the world. She silently promised to continue supporting her daughter's journey, knowing that the talent and determination she possessed could take her far beyond what anyone had imagined. The young girl's performance, while no longer the central focus of applause, continued to resonate through the room. Each note was a reminder of what could be achieved through dedication, practice, and courage. She played softly, letting the music speak for itself, aware that it had already left an indelible mark on the hearts and minds of everyone present. The act of sharing her gift had become a personal triumph, a moment of growth and realization that she would carry with her forever. The billionaire, moved by the experience, approached the girl's mother and spoke privately, acknowledging the extraordinary circumstances and the remarkable talent of her daughter. He expressed his admiration and hinted at opportunities that could support the young girl's musical journey, recognizing that true talent deserved nurturing and encouragement. The mother, grateful for the acknowledgement and the promise of support, felt hope and relief, knowing that her daughter's potential could now be recognized on a larger stage. Guests continued to converse, sharing reflections on the performance and the profound impact it had on them. Many acknowledged the courage it took to perform under pressure, the depth of emotion conveyed through music, and the rare combination of talent and humility displayed by the young girl. The room was filled with a renewed sense of appreciation, not just for the performance, but for the broader lessons it imparted about perseverance, passion, and the power of authenticity. The young girl finally stood, stepping back from the piano with a sense of accomplishment and calm. She had faced the challenge, performed under scrutiny, and had emerged with her dignity, confidence, and talent fully recognized. The experience had taught her valuable lessons about courage, resilience, and the importance of staying true to oneself. She felt proud of what she had achieved, knowing that her music had touched hearts and inspired those who had witnessed it. Her mother embraced her once more, whispering words of encouragement and love. The bond between them, strengthened by years of dedication and shared experiences, felt stronger than ever. The young girl realized that her journey had only just begun, and that with continued practice, determination, and courage, she could achieve even greater heights in her musical career. The night had shown her that talent, when combined with heart and persistence, could break barriers and create unforgettable moments. The billionaire, now fully appreciative of the young girl's abilities, publicly acknowledged her once more, praising her courage and talent in front of the guests. His recognition carried weight and influence, signaling to the room that this was not just a fleeting moment of skill, but a true display of extraordinary potential. Guests responded with renewed admiration and respect, celebrating the young musician's achievement and the transformative power of her performance. As the evening drew to a close, the room buzzed with conversations about the performance and its lasting impact. Guests shared their impressions, expressed admiration, and reflected on the lessons they had learned from witnessing such talent and courage. The young girl had achieved something far beyond the expectations of the challenge. She had inspired, moved, and changed the perceptions of everyone present. In the quiet moments that followed, the young girl and her mother walked together, reflecting on the extraordinary night. They spoke of the challenges, the courage, and the dedication that had brought them to this point. They discussed hopes for the future, opportunities to further develop her talent, and the importance of staying true to her passion. The experience had strengthened their bond and provided a clear vision of the journey ahead. The night ended with a sense of fulfillment and hope. The young girl had proven her abilities, inspired those around her, and received recognition that would help her continue her journey. The lessons learned, the admiration earned, and the courage displayed would stay with her forever. She had faced doubt, skepticism, and immense pressure, and had emerged victorious in a way that was both inspiring and humbling. The performance became a story that would be remembered, shared, and celebrated. It was a reminder that true talent and courage can shine in any setting, that dedication and passion can overcome doubt and expectation, and that authenticity and heart are the most powerful forces in any endeavor. The maid's daughter had transformed a challenge into a triumph, leaving a lasting impact on everyone who had witnessed it, and setting the stage for a future filled with promise, hope, and extraordinary music.